Of course, we know that Japan sort of has a reputation for not being as welcoming of entrepreneurship. We know those college kids go to those jobs for life, big major companies, government sectors. So is this starting to change?
Hi, thank you for having me here today. Yes, it is. So there's actually been a bit of a societal change, especially compared to, say, about 10 years ago. These days there's really kind of been a bit of an overall push. People are essentially a lot more comfortable leaving their kind of cushy corporate jobs. There's a lot more cash. There's a lot more robust exit ecosystem. The average timeline for a corporate acquisition here has actually fallen to around 5 years, which I think is pretty exciting. There's also some incredibly strong PE ratios for startups exiting over here as well.
So what does the path to the public markets look like in Japan as compared to other places?
So it's actually quite lower cost here. Really, the main requirements are essentially 2 years of audited financials. In practice, the lowest valuation is really only about 50 million USD. TSE, Tokyo Stock Exchanges, really have 4 different main boards, including mothers. And the cost is fairly low. I'd say probably on average, maybe 500,000 USD or less.
And Matt, we are just getting some breaking news amid the ongoing street protests in New York, as well as across other parts of the US. We're hearing reporting from the New York Times saying that an officer in Louisville has been shot. That's according to reporting from the New York Times, saying that a police officer has been shot amid the Breonna Taylor protests. Of course, we know that in Louisville, a curfew as well as a state of emergency has been called. We are seeing protests on the streets, not just there, but across other cities across the US, including in New York City, as protesters take to the streets over a Kentucky grand jury electing not to charge any of the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's death with murder. We're now hearing reporting from the New York Times that a police officer has been shot in Louisville. Matt, let's get back to the topic at hand. What sort of, I suppose, differentiation in opportunities that have come up given the unusual monetary fiscal environment that we're in at the moment?
So it's actually, there's a lot of great support here in Japan for startups, especially mid to large tier companies that are trying to go abroad. And I think that's also where we here at Pacific Bay can kind of help with that. Suga is essentially going to be continuing a lot of the same policies that Abe had, including financial easing. We're seeing a lot of increases in essentially much lower debt capital to help those Japanese startups go abroad. And right now, in particular, especially a lot more lines of equity and cash capital to help them finance and go overseas as well. So we think it's a pretty exciting environment and pretty glad to be a part of it.
And of course, your beat is really healthcare. We've seen a flurry of healthcare listings, particularly in Hong Kong and China. Do you see that sort of a trend continuing across the rest of Asia and in Japan?
So Japan has has a really great market for healthcare. We've actually been taking a look at 3 pretty exciting portfolio ones. One of them is essentially lowering and expediting the cost of diagnostic histology. We're pretty excited to see those startups come out over here in Japan. I think there's a pretty robust market, especially with an aging population. So I think it would be pretty exciting and see a lot of growth over the next couple of years for them here too.
So what are your plans when it comes to the investment deals that you're expecting to make in the next few years? And how do you plan to grow your company as well?
So there's actually, there's a couple of really exciting companies here in Japan that I would say have comparatively lower valuations, especially in the current rounds, but will essentially kind of go out and pretty easily snag billion-dollar plus valuations upon exit. We see a lot of these opportunities kind of starting to come up in Japan, and there's just not a lot of external knowledge or external publication being out about them. We feel pretty well positioned to make use of our both corporate partners here to help those companies go overseas and kind of really help them grow up and scale up, which in turn increases their valuation much higher here in Japan. as well as kind of opportunistically invest into startups that we think would be kind of synergistic with our platform and portfolio.